Good day, North Lakes. We're so glad you joined us here on our YouTube channel today. And we are just doing our weekly review of what we talked about last week in our message, and then a little bit of a look forward to what we'll be talking about this next Sunday. So we skipped a week. We had a guest speaker, and so we weren't able to do that review. But if you're interested in what we talked about that week, we did talk about envy. Be glad to catch you up on that if you would like to ask me at a later time. So we are continuing our series called Soul Detox, which is kind of identifying those worldly influences that come into our hearts, our minds, our soul, and being able to identify those and filter them out so that they don't slowly destroy our souls and our relationship with God and our relationship with others. And this last week we concentrated on the acid of anger, and that's something that we all deal with. We actually had a table talk. I'm just going to read off the questions for you. You might want to pause the video after I read out these questions and maybe have a little self-discussion, or if you have somebody watching with you, you can discuss these questions amongst yourselves. Question 1 was, what is the one thing that consistently gets under your skin? Is it the big things or the small things? Question number 2, the Bible compares anger to a fire. What are some of the good things about fire and some of the bad things about fire? Question number 3, share about a time in your life when anger was bad for you and others around you. So maybe think about those, something that happened, anger that happened in your life that was really bad for you and others around you. Question number 4, has there ever been a time in your life where you think your anger was a good thing? And then question number 5, which do you think is better, to bottle up your anger or to let it out right away? And why do you think that? There you go. There's your 5 questions. If you want to press pause, you can kind of ponder some of those things. Welcome back. If you paused, welcome back. We're just going to, again, review what we talked about on Sunday. We talked about how anger can be a smoldering fire, something that kind of is buried underneath the surface. And even though we've kind of buried our anger, it just kind of sits there smoldering and before you know it, that smolder turns into a raging fire. So many things get under our skin. Someone cuts in front of us in traffic, someone is rude to you, or someone that you care about gets hurt, or someone's hurting somebody that you care about. Perhaps someone is arrogant and they think they know everything and you have to interact with them all the time. Perhaps there's an annoying coworker that you work with. Maybe a husband that leaves his clothes lying around everywhere. That's my wife's. That's what makes her mad, because I do that all the time. But perhaps it's not some of those little things, but perhaps it's the big things. It's things like a health issue that you didn't expect, or natural disasters in the world, or poverty, kids who are getting abused, shootings in the world, and murders, human trafficking. Maybe it's racism. Maybe it's someone that you work with or around all the time that kind of unfairly targets a group of people. Do any of those things make your blood boil? I'm sure I've listed one of them. And if those aren't there, I'm sure you have some other things that are in your life that smolder under the surface and make you really, really angry. Fire in the Bible, or anger in the Bible, is really compared to fire. There are many, many times in the Bible where it compares just to like that fire, even like a smoldering hidden fire. And just like fire, anger can be constructive and it can be destructive. It can be good when it motivates us to justice. It can be good in the pursuit of godly righteousness and doing the right thing. It can cleanse us, it can restore us, it can unite us in one purpose. Or if we allow anger to rage out of control, it can destroy us. It can hurt us. It can hurt others around us. It can destroy our relationships, whether it's our partners or whether it's relationships with our family, our children. Anger can reflect God's character, or it can distance ourselves from Him. It can invite God's Spirit into our lives to examine ourselves and to look at the hard truth of our own lives, or it can become an open invitation to destruction. So we need to understand that anger is a smoldering fire, and we need to identify whether it's causing us damage or it's actually causing us good things. We talked about how anger could be an unwelcome house guest. It's something that we don't necessarily think that we're inviting into our lives, but before you know it, it's there and we don't know what to do with it. Ephesians 4:26 and 27 says, "Be angry and don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity or a foothold." In that original language, it's really saying, don't invite the devil in to your life where he doesn't have to be. And that's what it's like when you invite anger into your life. We talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly of anger, and how it's sometimes it can be a progression, or also it can be something that we react to when it comes into our life. I don't know if you remember the story of Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve's sons. They were asked to give a sacrifice to God. Abel brought his sacrifice, and he followed God's instruction, and his sacrifice was welcomed by God, and he was applauded by God by giving such a great sacrifice. And then Cain brought a sacrifice. He didn't follow the instructions. He sacrificed something that he shouldn't have, and God was very upset about that. Cain went away angry, and instead of letting that anger be a good thing for him, it became a bad thing. Now, how does that work? Well, the good thing, the anger that he felt over that interaction and exchange with God, could have led him to go back and redo his sacrifice and do it right, but it didn't. He let that anger kind of get under the surface, get into his soul, and he was dwelling on it and going over it and over it in his mind. Sometimes, like we do, we kind of let that anger kind of reverberate into our minds, and the more we think about it, the worse it gets, and the more angry we get. And that's exactly what happened to him. That's the bad of anger. The bad of anger is those times where we just let it kind of reverberate in our brains and get worse and worse and worse. And then the ugly of anger is when we finally think about our anger so much, and it gets played over and over in our minds, that we start making plans to do something about that. And then we see those plans become real. And then that's the ugliness of anger. And that's what happened to Cain. He let those things play in his mind. He made a plan, and he carried out that plan, and he murdered his brother Abel. All because he didn't treat anger properly in his life. He could have done the good thing, but instead it graduated and went down this road of became the bad thing, and then it became the ugly thing. And you may say, well, that's an extreme case, but I don't know. Have you seen YouTube lately? I don't know if you're into the true crime videos, but if you watch any of those, you realize that this progression takes place in our society and our culture all the time. It is one of the main reasons why people do bad things, is because they aren't treating anger properly in their lives. They allow it to come in, and instead of letting it motivate them to do the good thing, it goes down the road of becoming the bad thing, and then it becomes the ugly thing. Our world, if you want to blame anything for the suffering and the pain and the evil of our world, you need to blame anger. And the improper use of it. It is to blame for many of the bad and evil things that we see in our world. Just people not being able to understand how to control that very, very strong emotion. And that is that unwelcome house guest. We have to treat it as an unwelcome house guest. It comes into our our lives, it comes into our minds, our hearts, our souls, and we have to make a decision on how to handle it. And we need to make sure that we're handling it in a good way rather than allowing it to progress into something that can become very ugly and destroy our relationships, destroy our relationship with God, destroy our relationship with other people, and even send us to prison. That's not a good thing, is it? So what do we do? We talked a lot about that at the end of our time together. We talked about how some people are spewers, some people are stewers. In other words, some people react to quickly about their anger, and they spew out things and they leave destruction in their path. And then there's those who just stew on their anger and they keep it in and bottled up. And you don't think that they're angry, but over time it just builds up and builds up, and suddenly that anger comes out. Or maybe it comes out in subtle ways. It can come out in subtle ways, like rolling your eyes at people, sarcasm, holding grudges. Maybe you're hypercritical of somebody because really you're just angry at them, but you're just trying to stuff it down. Or you're extra judgmental of everybody around you. That could be because you're just angry about something, and it comes out in these subtle ways. Or maybe you stuff it down and eventually it blows up, and it just can destroy a whole family. It can destroy everything in your life. David felt that way. Psalm 32:3, it says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long." In other words, it hurt his body when he held that stuff in. So again, we talked about if you're a spewer or a stewer, it's probably good to know which one you are. And just by saying and talking about it, I'm sure you already know what kind of person you are when it comes to anger. And how do we extinguish it? How do we, when we start to feel it, how do we extinguish that reaction to spew or stew? Either way, we have to kind of figure out how we get rid of our anger. We have to start practicing self-control. We need to be able to learn how to extinguish. We have to let it go, and let it go early. And I know that sounds very easy, but it isn't. We have to stop obsessing over it. We have to stop allowing anger to get a foothold in our soul, and stop stewing over it. Stop reacting to it. We have to, when we feel it, we have to recognize what it is and stop right away. Process it, and then let it go. And it might feel impossible to do at first. But, anger doesn't become bad or ugly just on its own. It is a choice that we make. And it may not feel like it's a choice. You may be watching this and going, well, Rob, I am just a hot-tempered person. That's just who I am. That's who I'll always be. I can't control that. Well, that's really not true. I mean, if you think about it, have you ever been in the middle of an argument and you get a phone call from somebody and you're yelling and screaming, and then you get this phone call and go, "Oh, hello, how are you? How are you doing? Oh, it's been so long since I've talked to you. It's so great to hear from you, man. I love you and I love your family, and it's so great to hear from you." Click, and then you're right back into the argument. Or maybe you're really, really mad at something, and you're having this argument with somebody, or you're really spewing, and then you pick up a drink with a straw, and it's like, "Ooh," and then you put it back down, and then you're back right into it. It's not the case that you're just hot-tempered. It's that it's a choice that you make to be hot-tempered, and we can control it. We can control that anger if we really, really want to. And so we have to actually train ourselves to stop and let it go. We have to stop and let it go. We have to start looking at things differently. You know, that person that we're waiting for, maybe they're late. Maybe the more late they are, the more angry we get. Just drop it. You know, nobody's going to die because they're late. Maybe someone does the dishes wrong, or maybe they fold the clothes wrong. You know, let it go. At least they're giving it a go. That coworker that's getting on your nerves, don't worry about it. Let the boss handle that. You let it go. God loves those people just as much as he loves you. And we need to really understand that some things are just not worthy of getting angry about. And it turns out that's most things. So, I want to read one more scripture and give you a little bit of an action step that we gave people on Sunday. It's James 1:19 and 20. It says, "This you know, my brothers and sisters, everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." And that's the action step. We need to be quick to listen, take time to process what's being said and the event that's going on around us, or the things that are happening that are making us angry. We need to be quick to listen and see what's going on. Then we need to take time to process that. In other words, we need to be quick to hear and slow to speak. So taking time to process what's happening before we react. And then don't jump straight in to being angry. In other words, slow to anger. Make that process a slow process. For the anger of man doesn't achieve anything, especially the righteousness of God. And so that's your action steps this week. I'm sorry we're posting a little bit late this week, but I really encourage you to spend the rest of the week going through that process. Every time you feel that strong emotion of anger, listen, quick to hear, take time to process, slow to speak, don't speak right away on it, and then don't jump straight away into being angry. Allow time to pass. And if you are angry, don't go to bed angry. That was one of God's biggest things that he mentions to us, is that he doesn't want us to go to bed angry. He wants us to be able to process through those things so that anger doesn't build and smolder like a fire. So I hope that was an encouragement to you this week. Next week, we continue our series, Soul Detox, Scare Pollution. We're going to be talking about fear. We're going to be talking about the not so fantastic four of fear and really hopefully find some encouragement on how we can be less fearful and really rely and have faith in God when we need to. So thank you for joining us. We invite you to come to church on Sunday. We're meeting at the Cameron Park Community Center on North Lakes Drive. You can come early for coffee from 9 in the morning to 10, and at 10 we have our message time and our service time, and then afterwards we have a little bit of a morning tea where we can fellowship and chat with each other. So we invite you to come along and bring some friends. So thank you for tuning in to our YouTube channel this week. Thank you so much.